The first scream came just as the airplane doors locked. Sharp, piercing, unstoppable. Heads turned, brows furrowed, and sighs rippled through the crowded cabin. A boy, maybe 6 or 7, was thrashing in his seat. His face was red, tears streaked down, and his small fists banged against the armrest. His mother looked helpless, and the man beside her, dressed in a sharp business suit, looked even more overwhelmed. That man, people whispered, was David Langford, one of the most powerful CEOs in the country. But right now, he didn't look powerful at all. He just looked like a father who had run out of options. The boy's autism made flying almost impossible. The sound, the confinement, the strangers, it was too much. But this time, the stakes were higher. David was flying overseas to close a deal worth billions. Canceling wasn't an option, and so the passengers began to mutter, "Why can't they control him? Some of us need rest, not this circus." Typical entitled parents, the boy screamed louder, almost as if he could feel the judgment crushing down on them. David closed his eyes, shoulders slumped. For all his wealth, all his power, he was powerless here. That's when a man from the back of the plane stood up. He wasn't in a suit. He wasn't anyone recognizable. Just a regular guy in a plain t-shirt, carrying the look of someone who'd lived through his share of storms. He had a little girl sitting quietly in the back, watching with wide eyes. This man was a single dad named Mark. Without waiting for permission, Mark walked up the aisle. Passengers rolled their eyes, assuming he'd complain, but instead, he knelt down right beside the boy. The CEO tensed. "Sir, please, where?" But before he could finish, Mark pulled something out of his pocket, a small toy airplane. Its wings were taped, the paint chipped, but it clearly had history. He set it gently on the tray table. Then, in a calm voice, he whispered, "Hey, buddy, a broken bar, want to show me how this one flies?" The boy's screams hiccuped. His eyes locked on the toy. His little hand reached out, trembling, and grabbed it. For the first time in 20 minutes, the noise stopped. Mark smiled and began making soft whoosh sounds, gliding his hand like a plane. The boy copied him, giggling through tears. The cabin went silent, not with frustration this time, but with awe. David stared, stunned. "How did you a broken bar?" Mark gave a small shrug. "My daughter's autistic too. Planes used to terrify her. This little toy saved us more than once." The boy now laughed, really laughed, as the toy circled around. Other passengers who had been annoyed moments ago began smiling. Some even teared up. The atmosphere in the cabin shifted from tension to warmth. But the moment that hit hardest wasn't what Mark did for the boy. It was when his little girl stood up in the back and walked down the aisle. She placed her hand softly on the CEO's son's shoulder and said, "It's okay. Airplanes are safe. Daddy always says so." And the boy believed her. The rest of the flight was peaceful. The boy played with the toy until he fell asleep in his father's arms. And for the first time in years, David, the man who thought money solved everything, felt humbled. When the plane landed, he shook Mark's hand with both of his. "I own companies. I lead thousands. But today, you taught me what leadership really looks like." His voice broke. "Thank you, a broken bar, not for calming my son, but for showing me how to be his dad." Mark just smiled, lifting his daughter into his arms. "We're all just doing our best. Sometimes, it just takes a little kindness." Passengers who once grumbled now applauded as the two families walked off together. For one rare moment, an airplane full of strangers remembered that humanity is still our greatest strength. And somewhere in that busy airport, a CEO who thought he had it all realized he had just witnessed the greatest miracle, not in business, but in fatherhood, in compassion. And the applause faded as passengers began to gather their bags. But David, the CEO, didn't move. His son slept soundly on his chest, toy plane still clutched in his tiny hand. For years, David had hidden his son's autism from boardrooms and investors, terrified that vulnerability might be seen as weakness. Yet here he was, watching a single dad with no fortune, no entourage, perform a miracle that all his money never could. As they stepped into the terminal, David caught up with Mark. "Listen," he said, "I don't usually a broken bar well. I never do this. But whatever you do for work, I want to help, financially, career-wise, anything. Just say the word." Mark shook his head. adjusting his daughter on his hip. "I appreciate it, really, but I don't need a job or a paycheck. What I do need, what parents like us need, is for people to stop judging our kids, to see them as more than the noise they make, to see us as more than just struggling parents." David froze. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Not investors, not employees, not even friends. For a moment, he realized he had spent his life trying to win deals, when the real deal he needed to win was with his own son. Mark's daughter tugged her dad's sleeve. "Daddy, a broken bark and he come play with us sometime." She pointed to the CEO's boy, who had just woken up, clutching the toy airplane. And something in David broke open. He smiled, not the rehearsed corporate smile, but something genuine. "I'd like that," he whispered. The two families walked out of the airport together. No VIP lounge, no limousines, no paparazzi, just a CEO carrying his son, following behind a single dad and a little girl who had reminded him what mattered most. Weeks later, headlines splashed across business news: CEO launches new foundation for autistic families. But the truth, the part the cameras never saw, was far simpler. Every weekend, before the world of billion-dollar deals and flashing cameras could reach him, David Langford sat in a park with his son and a single dad named Mark watching their children laugh as toy airplanes soared across the sky. And in those moments, he knew, this was the real success story. Power of one small act of love.